Anyone who saw this young boy would think he was the one who needed saving. That was the first mistake. And the last mistake countless people ever made. It all began on a moonlit night. Moonlight blanketed the Sherlock estate, where every dark rumor began. People whispered that a bloodthirsty monster was imprisoned beneath the mansion. Deep in the darkness, a young boy named Karl cried out in despair, begging for help. No one answered. Only the sound of chains scraping across the cold dungeon echoed back. Then a mysterious man appeared before Karl. He could not forget the terrifying warning about the Sherlock family's monster. Trembling, Karl pleaded with him to break the chains before it was too late. Seeing only a frail and helpless boy, the man slowly let his guard down. Even so, he asked if Karl was the monster everyone feared. Karl simply shook his head in confusion, as if he did not know the truth himself. Believing he was rescuing an innocent victim, the man decided to help. He put away his sword and took out a small lock-picking tool. Click. The lock began to give way, bringing a spark of hope. But just as the chains were about to come off, everything changed in an instant. A blade suddenly pierced straight through the man's body. Karl smiled calmly and asked, "The monster you were talking about? Was it me?" His innocent smile instantly twisted into something chilling with excitement. Only then did the man realize the rumors had been true all along. Karl quietly watched his victim collapse, as though it were nothing more than a familiar game. With a satisfied grin, he even praised himself for another successful hunt. Then Karl hummed to himself, complaining that all the blood had stained the clothes his older brother had given him. That carefree innocence made the gruesome scene even more disturbing. Amid the pool of blood, a sapphire suddenly slipped from the dead man's hand. Karl picked it up, examined it for a moment, then quickly lost interest. What truly disappointed him was that no one had managed to kill him today. Every so-called hero had ended up becoming the prey instead. Bored, Karl decided to go find his older brother. Only one thought remained in his mind: to open a brand new hunting ground. Several months later, a massive ship arrived at Maitland Harbor, carrying passengers who had no idea what awaited them. The harbor soon filled with mocking laughter and cruel insults aimed at a mysterious newcomer. Meanwhile, the Sherlock family's monster quietly waited for the next prey to appear, and that was only the beginning of the nightmare. The prison ship bound for Nachino Island descended into chaos from the very first hours of the voyage. The prisoners laughed off the rumors about the Sherlock family's monster, while Desa quietly tightened his grip on the sapphire in his hand. One inmate loudly warned that they were all being taken to an island where only death awaited. A single calm question from Desa was enough to silence the entire cabin. His cold stare made even the most aggressive prisoners hesitate. At last, the truth came out. The ship's destination was Nachino Island, a land filled with deadly beasts, dense forests, and almost no chance of survival. Every prisoner had been sent there by the Sherlock family as expendable pawns. One inmate immediately tried to cling to Desa, hoping to improve his chances of staying alive. Desa refused without hesitation, and exposed the lingering scent of sedatives still clinging to the man. That single remark was enough to throw the entire cabin into suspicion and panic. Amid the shouting, Desa quietly looked at a photo of his younger brother, who had vanished without a trace. He had only one goal left: to find Coleman, no matter the cost. Just then, a cry for help rang out from the crowd. A blonde-haired boy was being surrounded and relentlessly harassed by several prisoners. He repeatedly warned them not to cause trouble on the ship, or they would regret it. His warning was met with nothing but mocking laughter. The moment Karl heard the words, "older brother," something changed in his eyes. For a brief instant, a vision of bloodshed flashed through his mind before disappearing as if it had never existed. Karl immediately returned to his timid act, hiding his true nature behind a helpless appearance. On the outside, he trembled and begged for mercy. Deep down, he only wished the ship would reach the island sooner. Karl believed that once they left these waters, nothing would be able to stop him. The prisoner kept closing in, completely unaware that he had chosen the wrong target. Karl quietly smiled, counting down the seconds until the perfect moment. Just as a fist was about to come crashing down, a cold voice suddenly cut through the air. Desa stepped in and caught the attacker's arm before the punch could land. In the blink of an eye, the flash of his blade was enough to stop the man from taking another step. Desa pulled Karl behind him, and calmly stood between the boy and the crowd. He left them with only one short sentence: "He already said no." Karl silently stared at Desa's back as a faint smile slowly appeared on his lips. The prey he had been waiting for all this time had finally arrived. In the blink of an eye, a suffocating silence settled over the entire cabin. The prisoner screamed while clutching his injured arm, but Desa remained calm, standing protectively in front of Karl. To Karl, that moment was more shocking than anything he had ever experienced. He had never met someone so strong, yet so composed. From that instant on, Desa became someone truly special in Karl's eyes. Of course, All of that existed only in Karl's mind. In reality, Desa simply asked if he was hurt. Karl immediately hid his emotions and pretended to tremble as he stepped behind Desa. Meanwhile, Desa quietly watched every subtle reaction from the strange young boy. Karl smiled and thanked him, while secretly hoping Desa would keep paying attention to him. Even a single glance from Desa was enough to throw Karl's thoughts into chaos. Then Desa calmly stepped back and created some distance between them. The unexpected move caught Karl completely off guard. Desa dealt with the troublemaker, then calmly sheathed his weapon as if nothing had happened. Before leaving, he offered only one brief piece of advice. In a place like this, kindness given to the wrong person could be more dangerous than cold indifference. He also warned Karl not to trust anyone aboard this ship. Karl quickly called after him, asking if they could travel together. But Desa refused from the very beginning. He had no intention of teaming up with anyone. He had only one goal left, and he refused to let anyone stand in his way. Karl silently watched Desa's figure disappear into the distance. It was the first time anyone had rejected him so directly. Instead of feeling disappointed, Karl found the situation even more fascinating. The smile on his face grew wider, as though he had just discovered a brand new challenge. As Desa continued forward, Karl quietly decided he would never take his eyes off that man. While Karl secretly followed Desa, the ship steadily drew closer to Nachino Island. The island lay beneath the darkness, as if waiting for its first visitors to arrive. Cheers erupted as the ship reached the harbor, yet no one knew what awaited them. Desa silently looked toward the island and tightened his grip on the sapphire. To him, this was more than a mission. It was his last hope of finding Coleman. Suddenly, memories of the past rushed back like a nightmare that had never truly ended. The Clear family had once been a loyal house that earned countless honors serving the kingdom. But after a single political upheaval, the entire family was branded as traitors. Their honor was destroyed, their loved ones were torn apart, and everything they had was taken away in an instant. Before disappearing forever, Desa's father managed to leave his children with one final message. All Coleman could do was watch everything fall apart before his eyes. From that day on, Desa joined the royal guard. Determined to restore his family's honor, he fought tirelessly to prove that his family had been innocent all along. But just as hope finally appeared, Coleman was accused in another case. Desa believed his younger brother was innocent and vowed to uncover the truth. Yet before the truth could come to light, Coleman vanished without leaving a single trace. That was why Desa placed everything on this journey to Nachino Island. Meanwhile, from the shadows of the island, Karl quietly watched Desa's every move. Karl's smile became harder and harder to read, as if he had finally found what he had been waiting for. Far away, a mysterious man observed everything through a pair of binoculars. A faint smile crossed his face, as though every event was unfolding exactly as he had planned. Darkness engulfed the lighthouse, signaling that the island's trial had officially begun. Desa had no idea that he had already become the center of several people's plans, and in the silent night, a quiet voice whispered, "My darling." The moment Desa set foot on Nachino Island, he sensed that something about the place was deeply unsettling. The lighthouse beam swept across the darkness again and again, as if it were tracking everyone's every move. Desa immediately realized he was not the only one watching. But before he could locate the source of that gaze, the guards forced everyone to keep moving. The noise of the prisoners pushing and shouting quickly shattered the island's silence. A man in a long cloak stepped before the crowd, with a mysterious smile. He announced that, from this moment on, everyone's past no longer mattered. On this island, each person would exist as nothing more than a number. The guards assigned numbers to every prisoner without asking for a single name. Desa became prisoner 001. Karl received the number 000, making him the only exception among them. That detail alone was enough to make Desa pay closer attention to him. The island's overseer continued explaining the rules. Anyone who wanted better shelter or better resources would have to earn them. Only the strong had the right to choose. The moment he finished speaking, the prisoners rushed to claim the best rooms. Chaos erupted within seconds. Desa ignored the scramble and quietly observed everything around him. The only thing that truly mattered to him was finding a trace of Coleman. As Desa approached an empty room, a familiar face suddenly appeared before him. Karl smiled as if their meeting were nothing more than a coincidence, but Desa knew perfectly well that it was not. He immediately turned to leave without any intention of stopping. Karl stubbornly followed behind, insisting that everything was just a coincidence. Desa suddenly drew his sword and coldly asked why Karl kept appearing wherever he went. Karl quickly denied it and pointed toward the room ahead. He explained that it was meant for two people and suggested they share it so they could look out for each other. Karl even pretended to be frightened, promising he would not get in Desa's way. Desa remained silent, his eyes never leaving the strange young man. Just as the tension reached its peak, a desperate scream suddenly echoed through the area. A prisoner was thrown out of the crowd and sent flying straight toward them. Without thinking, Karl rushed forward and shielded Desa. Desa stepped aside at once, leaving Karl to take the full impact. Only seconds later, Karl stood back up as though nothing had happened. He immediately asked if Desa had been hurt. Karl forced an awkward smile and claimed it had all been an unfortunate accident. Desa watched him in silence, becoming more convinced that this strange young man was anything but ordinary. Even so, he stood by his decision and reminded Karl not to expect any help from him. Karl quickly nodded and obediently promised he would take care of himself. As night slowly fell, the dormitory soon grew quiet, but while Desa closed his eyes to rest, Karl remained awake in the darkness. He stared at Desa with an unreadable smile, as though waiting for the perfect moment. Desa had no idea that his first night on the island was only the beginning of the real trial. Karl's first night on Nachino Island began with a dangerously tempting thought, but just before things crossed the line, he suddenly regained his composure. Karl laughed quietly at himself, deciding that hunger had simply let his imagination run too far. Even so, he could not take his eyes off Desa. To Karl, Desa had become the most intriguing target on the entire island. He decided not to make a move just yet. A truly entertaining game was worth waiting for. Just then, a desperate cry for help shattered the silence of the night. Karl immediately slipped out of the room and disappeared into the dark forest. Desa quietly opened his eyes, realizing Karl had already left. His instincts told him that the young man was hiding a very dangerous secret. Deep in the forest, the cries for help grew closer with every step. A terrified prisoner rushed toward Karl, desperately begging for help. Karl kept his gentle smile and calmly asked where everyone else had gone. Believing he had found a savior, the man eagerly pointed the way. Only then did Karl learn exactly what he wanted to know. He softly thanked the man before quietly walking on. Moments later, the forest fell silent again, as though no one had ever been there. Karl merely frowned for a moment before continuing his search for the next target. Meanwhile, Desa followed the faint traces left behind in the darkness, but every clue disappeared far too quickly to make sense. Desa looked up at the lighthouse beams sweeping across the night sky. His instincts told him that every secret on the island somehow led back to that place. Just as Desa prepared to continue his search, a powerful roar echoed from deep within the forest. In an instant, a heavy silence settled over the entire island. Desa slowly turned toward the source of the sound. The true survival trial had finally begun. What do you think will happen first? Will Desa uncover Karl's secret, or will Karl get close to Desa first? Share your prediction in the comments below.